Buenas tardes a todo el mundo. Good evening. It's a real pleasure for me to introduce this conversation between John Carlin and Jose Antonio. But I would like to say at the start a few words about this program, Sports in Society, a Hispanic Indian Perspective. I would like to say that this is the brainchild of Jose Antonio Cachaza. That's just one of the ideas that we have over lunch or over a coffee, which usually gives us our best ideas. And we came with the idea of doing a series of talks, conversations about soccer in India with La Liga. And today we start with John Carlin and Jose Antonio, a benign tribalism. I would like to remind you that we will continue on 24th with Ayaz Memon and Jose Antonio, Football in the Country of Cricket, the Perspective of an Indian Journalist. And again, on 6 April, we will have training in India, an intercultural experience when we will have Spanish trainers that work here in India, like Carlos Cuadrat, Carlos Santamaria, and Javier Cabrera. And finally, we will end this program on the 27th of April, screening a movie, a very Maradona by Kusturica, with remarks by Saji Prabhakaran and Vivek Setia, the gods of the modern world. As I say, we are very proud to do this. This is an unusual program for us, which usually we concentrate more on literature, but doing things with La Liga is a really great pleasure for us, and especially with Jose Antonio, who has such an inquisitive mind that it's a real pleasure and a privilege, to be companions here in India, representing Spain, you with soccer and us with the language and literature and culture. It's also a great privilege for us to have John Carlin today. And for the people, I think most of the audience, I'm sure, heard about John Carlin. He needs no introduction, but if you allow me to say just a few words about him, for those a little bit more formal, I mean, he's very well known for his book, Playing the Enemy, Nelson Mandela and the Game That Made a Nation, about former South African President Nelson Mandela, and how he used the 1995 Rugby World Cup to reconcile a nation divided by racial segregation. This book was the basis for the 2009 film Invictus by Clint Eastwood. John is very well known in Spain. Actually, if I am not wrong, John, you are half Spanish, half British by birth and also by vocation. You speak Spanish and completely as a native. You understand Catalan also, we know, and you live in Spain, and you are really, we count you as one of us. And in August 2001, Carlin collaborated with Rafa Nadal on this latest autobiography, Rafa. As I said, he needs no introduction, and we are absolutely delighted to have you here, looking forward to this, which I'm sure will be a very interesting conversation for our Indian audience. I would like to remind that we will record this conversation and that will be posted at the YouTube channel of the Instituto Cervantes. Jose, you have the floor. Thanks very much to both of you for collaborating with Instituto Cervantes.
Well, thank you, Oscar. It's a real pleasure. And as you say, I mean, some of the big football operations happen in, they say there's like a napkin negotiations, no? And when you return a napkin, what you do. And this is what happened with this series, no? It's just that, oh, we can do something. And then I had to thank John because basically he is the reason of the whole cycle, no? When he said that he will join us. And so let's hope that we can do something interesting and also something fun. We tend to take sports too seriously. I am the first one, I am a professional of that, but let's not forget that sports is also fun and many other things, no? you mentioned that like a few that about John. I don't have to say nothing much more, but I think I had to point out that, John, you have lived in 3 countries where football is a religion, no? Britain, Spain, and Argentina, no? And with quite different views of football, but a shared passion, no? And now we are here talking to you from India, in a country where football is still like a growing religion and starting religion. I don't know how to define it, and where the real religion is cricket. But I mean, I'm on your books. I don't know if can you see me? Yeah, all right. I'm on your books. I point out one I was reading these last days. No, this one is 2010, which basically cover articles you wrote between 2005 and 2010, and you brought the concept of the tribe, no, la tribu in Spanish, which basically took me to a book I read a few years back by Desmond Morris, the football tribe. No, I think. I do belong to that tribe. Probably if we start talking about what we like or we dislike, we have many disagreements, a few agreements, and that's the fun of it. No, Morris used to say, his theory was that football is so big worldwide because it basically takes us back to the atavism of our older days when the man was just a hunting pack. And revisiting his book for preparing this talk, he used to say, he wrote that football is the only sport that covers all the attributes that apply to that hunting ritual that was the tribes back in the day. So, and also he says that football brings together a very simple game, but that unleashes a whole bunch of emotional forces that full of complexity. Is that complex? Is that easy? How do you see it, John? And thank you for coming.
Okay, well, there's a lot there you've given me to chew on, Jose Antonio. Let me try and simplify, or to sort of cut to the essentials. Look, the tribe is not something of the past. We remain a deeply, fundamentally tribal species. I mean, the tribe was the first organizing system of human society. People found way back before history books, before writing, that human beings could prosper more by working together than working individually. And so tribes were formed, yes, for hunting and gathering and all the primitive stuff that was done, you know, at the birth of Homo sapiens 50 or maybe 100,000 years ago. But that principle of the tribe continues absolutely today, as much as ever. And as I say, it's something that can be for the good of mankind, you know, by people pooling their talents and their energies, we can advance further and be more prosperous, but also it leads to a hell of a lot of conflict. I mean, right now, the war that's taking place in Ukraine is an essentially tribal affair. It's all about people's notions of what tribe they belong to. I mean, the flag, the nation, they're all extensions of the same idea of the tribe. And the tribe has been, the tribal phenomenon has been beneficial, but also tremendously damaging and destructive over the course of time. I mean, the vast majority of wars have basically been tribal in nature. My tribe fights your tribe, my country fights your country. And the thing about football is that it is tribal. I mean, a game between two teams is, you know, there's two little tribes of 11, but then of course you multiply that by millions when you get to talk about the really big teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona and Manchester United, and they each have their tribes. And it matters desperately, it matters keenly to the supporters that their tribe should win that game, should win the cup. Now, George Orwell who I admire immensely. He's one of the most wonderful writers of the 20th century for me, and an absolute role model really for any journalist, is someone that I disagree with profoundly on football. He was very, very anti-football. He thought it evoked all the worst passions of humanity. And he described football as war minus the shooting, in a famous phrase of George Orwell's. Now, he thinks this is a bad thing. I think it's a really good thing. I mean, a war without shooting, without people being killed, is great, because I think what football offers is an outlet for those tribal sentiments that we all have, whether you like it or not. We're all born, in a particular place, and we then absorb the characteristics of that place, and then we pick our football team, or our football team picks us through our fathers or friends. And so football is, you use the word religion, let's call it a secular religion, but I mean, it's definitely the biggest secular religion, or indeed the biggest religion in the world. There are more people who follow football, who are engaged passionately by football, than belong to any particular religion or ideology. I mean, in fact, that's the beauty of it. It crosses all the religions, all the ideologies, all the different races. Everybody, loves the game. And then when the actual match begins, they divide into tribes. But I think in a fundamentally healthy and therapeutic way, because how many people have been killed, how many people have suffered since the invention of football 150 years ago, compared to the number of people that have been killed for following, other tribes, nations, religions, ideologies. I mean, you can't begin to compare. Every now and again, you get some sad, terrible incident, but it's the exception that proves the rule. So just to summarize, I think that football is a healthy, good thing for society. It provides a fundamentally civilized and peaceful outlet for those tribal passions that we all have. And of course, it's also great fun. It gives us something to amuse ourselves. It also, for people who maybe are having difficulties in their personal lives, or struggling to feed their families, or having a difficult time at work, it's a consolation. It's something to take your mind away from things, and it gives you 90 minutes of intensity and fun, plus art too. And it's art for the masses, art for the great masses of the planet. It's it's sort of ballet and music and everything all wrapped up in one game, in this simple game in which you've got to kick a ball and between three pieces of wood.
Yeah, I think it was Manuel Vázquez Montalbán who said that football is like this religion with minor gods, which are the big players. No, so
yes, and not so minor. I mean, some of the I think it's Oscar Pujol was just talking about this Maradona film you're going to be seeing soon. Yeah. I think it talks about Maradona as a kind of godlike figure, which he was for a lot of people. I mean, he really was. And the same goes for Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. They are worshipped.
No, that's absolutely no. And I mean, I tell you, for example, at the heyday of the Ronaldo and Messi Madrid versus Barca, we did a talk in December 2017. We did a watch party in Delhi that 17,000 people show up to watch it on the big screen. No, those like bringing the Pope to India. No, so that's in the big screens, but those are the two popes, no, of football at that. Well, the Pope is Mr. Infantino, but let's not talk about that. But those are the saints, no, coming to these foreign lands. And I wanted to talk to you about the origin of you are British Spanish, you live in Argentina, and football is like the English game, no, as it said in this, for me, really interesting Netflix series on the origins of football. And I think it was Simon Cooper who wrote that, interestingly enough, football has developed especially strong in countries like Argentina, as you wrote sometime, that has a love to hate, or better hate to love relationship with Britain. But curiously enough, in the main Commonwealth countries, football is not the number one sport. India is a great example. is this contradiction? I mean, football lives in contradiction all the time. Is something inherent? Is precisely that is nothing clear or direct what makes it so passionate?
That's actually very interesting. You know, I've thought a lot about football, but I've never thought about what you just said now, which is it's true that in the, you know, the countries of the empire and now the Commonwealth, football didn't take root to the same degree as intensely as it did in countries that did not belong to the British Empire. And I cannot think immediately of a reason to explain that. Partly it could be that, you know, some countries in the old British Empire, now Commonwealth, are very, very hot countries. I mean, you know, India's problem as a football nation is that the temperatures are very, very high. And so India lends itself, I would say, more to cricket for reasons of geography and climate than to football. And the same can be said for other nations along the, you know, between the two tropics. But I mean, on Argentina, I've been an absolute football fanatic all my life, and it really is to do with Argentina. When I was 3 years old, my father got a job in Argentina, and I went there, and nobody consulted me for my opinion. I was just taken to Buenos Aires, and I lived in Argentina between the age of 3 and 10 years old. And if you're a boy in Argentina, and I think increasingly now a girl too, but when I was there, I'm talking sort of 50 years ago, you know, it was just the absolute sort of raging passion of everybody. And it was just completely impossible that I would not have become a football fan. I remember, I mean, everybody has their first memory of going to a football game or maybe watching a football game on TV. And there was one moment in my life which set my path. I mean, after this thing I'm going to describe to you now happened, there was no way I was going to be anything other than a football nut all my life. We lived in an apartment building in Buenos Aires, and the janitor lived in a flat on the ground floor, and he had a son who was about, I don't know, in his early 20s, and he was a professional footballer, and he played at right back for a local second division team. And one day when I was about 6, he said, "Do you want to come to the game with me?" And I said, of course. I was absolutely thrilled. And I remember he took me by the hand. We went, the stadium was actually only about 15 minutes walk from where we lived. And he took me there. And I remember arriving, the stadium was full. There were about 20,000 people there. He went into the dressing room and handed me over to some friends who looked after me. And just emerging, you know, from the darkness up into the where you sit and you see the green of the field. It was just such an incredibly memorable experience. Is fixed in my mind's eye right to this day. And the roar of the crowd when the players came out, and my pride that my friend was there playing and that his team won. You know, that was just such a powerful experience. And you know, and after the game, I waited for him outside the dressing room, and he came out all showered, and fans were queuing up to, you know, ask for his autograph, and I was there holding his hand, beaming with pride. Anyway, I think everybody's had sort of variations on that sort of experience when they were children, and I was just trapped. I was captured. I was never going to be anything other than a football fan for the rest of my days.
Yeah, I think we all have that. No, I still remember the first time. I am from Ferrol, a smaller town in Galicia near La Coruña, and I still remember the first time I went to see my football, my town home team. Now that we are in third division right now, no, well, the third category of Spanish football, and that memory of my first match, I cannot forget it. Even I do remember my father taking me to one match that I cannot remember when or what match was, but for me was that excitement of going with your father, and what you say, that excitement of the fans, the players, is something amazing, no? And it's basically probably that still is still the same, no? At the end, I mean, talk about the job we do from La Liga, trying to sell our football here in India and other countries. At the end, what we are selling is 22 young guys running after leather football on grass. That's the basics of the game. And this has been the same for the last 150 years. No, everything else comes around that. No, and I was reading your articles of 10 years back, and for example, something that you claimed back then, was the need to bring in VAR, refereeing assistance, which I do fully agree. But the funny thing, or the curious thing, is that when these help to solve some officiating problems, it has created a whole new of problems. So the level of indignation or the level of arguments around officiating has not changed. It's exactly the same, but in a different way. So I don't want to ask you about VAR, but is that football, it will be always the same? That doesn't matter how we change. If we are arguing about if the Super League is good or if the Super League is bad, the essence, it's exactly the same if you love Real Madrid or if you love obscure second or provincial team in Argentina, or not to say a fifth division team in England. The basis is the same for everyone.
Yeah, so long as they don't change the rules and make the goals wider or bigger, or get rid of the offside or something like that. Yeah, look, the thing about football is that it is so massively popular, and inevitably it's going to grow in popularity in India, as it's doing everywhere. I mean, it is like this. The game was started in England, and basically what they did is they sent missionaries around the world to spread the gospel of football. And in some places it caught on immediately like wildfire, in places like in Argentina. Otherwise, in other places it took longer. But it's an unstoppable force. You see, in my lifetime, when I was born, the idea that people would be, that India would be full of football fans was very unlikely. The United States, was a complete non-football country dominated by their three other sports, American football, baseball, and basketball. And now football's growing a lot in the United States. And in China, I mean, China's a country, again, where football, when I was born, had no penetration whatsoever, as far as I was aware. And now, it's growing, and a very, very large percentage of the fans who watch football, for example, the Premier League or La Liga, watch it in India and China, which would have been inconceivable, 20, 30 years ago. And what it is, I mean, the thing about football is that, first of all, is the extraordinary simplicity of playing it. It's easier to play than cricket, for example. I mean, cricket requires, bats and balls and wickets and all kinds of stuff. And, and if you're going to play properly, you need pads and gloves and everything else. Whereas football is a game, I've traveled in so many places. I've been a reporter. I've written articles from more than 60 countries. And everywhere you go, everywhere you'll find people playing football. And you go to the poorest country in Africa, and there'll be little kids kicking. If they haven't got a ball, they'll find some rolled up socks. If they haven't got rolled up socks, they'll find a stone. It's such a sort of elementally simple game requiring so little. I mean, really, to have a game between, 10 kids, you divide into 5, you find a little bit of level ground, you put a couple of items of clothing, to make the goals, and you find some kind of a ball, and off we go, and we're having fun, and everyone. So it begins right there. But I think, just to make a sort of almost philosophical point, I think a large reason why football is so popular as a spectator sport, I mean, it's easy to understand why it's so successful as a game to play, is that I'm a great believer in the centrality of luck, of chance in human experience. I mean, it's luck, where you're born, into what kind of family you're born, in what period of time you're born, right there at the beginning. Then it's luck what kind of an upbringing you have, which will shape your personality in a particular way. Then it's luck whether you end up, being successful or not in work. I mean, sure, you have to work hard and you have to be disciplined and all that, but the luck comes first. The luck comes first. Then you make your choice. You invest your energy or not. And I think luck is just so, and then of course the ultimate bad luck that we all die. I mean, luck is at the center of the human experience, whether people like to accept it or not. And most people don't like to accept it. And my point is that of all the games that I know, football is the one where luck plays the biggest part. And as such, is more of a mirror of the human condition. There is no other game that, and I like lots of other sports. I've got, I've been very involved in cricket. I love cricket. I would be able to communicate with, large sector of the Indian population immediately on the basis of my love of cricket. But I've played and I've enjoyed watching rugby and even, the American sports, American football and baseball. But there is, and I like tennis too. I've written a book about Rafa Nadal, but there is no sport that I'm aware of in which after a game is over, so many people spend so long debating whether the result was fair or not. Right? I mean, it just, and sometimes people spend, 20 years later, they're still discussing whether the result of a game was fair or not, which immediately makes the point that there's an element of luck in football, which is enormous. I mean, a lot turns on the referee's interpretation, or even now the VAR's interpretation. There is no godlike force that can tell you absolutely 100% that something was a penalty or wasn't a penalty or was a red card or a yellow card. So there's an element of chance of luck in those kind of decisions. And another thing about football, it's a game where so many goals are scored in a sort of unintended manners. How many goals are deflections of, the team that lets in the goal, the ball bounces off the guy's back, or is, just pure good luck. Or quite often you just, I don't know, close your eyes and you hit the ball and, most of the time you're going to hit it high into the sky. And then once it just happens to go into the back of the net. And I think that's a large reason why football is so successful as a spectator sport in particular, because it is just so closely bound to that central idea of luck, which is at the heart of the human story.
By the way, if anyone has to make some questions to John, please use the chat and we'll try to have him answering them. I mean, simplicity, I guess, is fundamental, but you mentioned the book you wrote about Rafa Nadal. And although football is by essence a collective sport, a team sport, the real name is Football Association, so it's talk about that. Football also has its own share of heroes, or gods, and also that lack of absolute truths applies to this. I mean, when we can spend, 20 years back there was a huge debate of who was better, Maradona or Pelé. Now I have had quite heated arguments with friends if Messi is at the level of Maradona or not, or if Messi is better than Cristiano or Cristiano is better than Messi. And the funny thing that we can, on the one hand, we can spend hours debating and this arguing, but there's no truth. It's impossible to find a real truth.
Well, wait a minute, Antonio. I mean, let's say you say your team is Ferrol in the third category of Spain, okay? Do you think we can compare the guy who wears the number 10 shirt for Ferrol with Messi?
No, in a lifetime.
Okay, so there is no discussion there.
No.
So it is possible to reach a judgment on these things, and anybody who believes that Cristiano Ronaldo is a better player than Messi simply does not understand the game. Or maybe they're fans of Real Madrid or one of the clubs that he plays for. I mean, it is as clear to me that Messi is better than Cristiano Ronaldo as it is clear to me that Messi is better than the number 10 for your third division team in Spain. I'm sorry.
Okay, I do agree. But debate will go on, and it's part of the fun. I think one of the Mr. Chand or Dr. Chand want to make like a question, so please go ahead. I think.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Hi.
And you've been talking on luck of the player, and I'm trying to say something more on it. The attention of the player. Now, basically, in all the games and sports, I would like to say the outer expression of the creative intelligence of the player is his attention. And this attention is like an omni scanner which can see and act in all the directions. It's a capable force. And then he has got this mind with him, which has got lots of information on the experiences and events of his life. And he has got trillions of cells, in his body. And each cell is connected so nicely and they work in unison. And the attention of the player, if he knows, if this is taught to the sports people, that how this attention really operates and how to use this attention to excel in the game, instead of basing upon the luck of the of the match of the players. I would like to say that if they know that how the attention operates, I would like to give you a small little example of Sachin Tendulkar playing in his early years in his street. And then he used to play in the street, and whenever they will play, they will break a window of any one of the houses there. And some people had objections, for that they should not play there in it. So what really happened then, this particular area, that a man living in the third floor of the building always used to come and hold them and used to tell all the children not to play there. Now he was bothering them so much, whereas they never broke the window of his house. This time they decided to break the window of the third floor. Now I am trying to explain you the attention of the player of Tendulkar, where he is holding his bat in his hand and his eyes are fixed on the bowler who's carrying that ball, and whether he will spin it on the right side or on the left side, off break or leg break. So he's watching there, and their decision is to break the window. Now, the attention of Sachin Tendulkar is, the collective attention of 100 trillion cells of his body. They are all there holding that bat in his hand. And wherever the ball will touch the ground and then jump, and then Sachin Tendulkar strikes onto the ball and breaks the window of the third floor. Now here I would like to say that all his muscles of his body, which are so connected with the creative intelligence, we may call it a soul, and which is operating behind the eyes. There are two optical nerves running in the center of the head, which is connected to the ears also. That location, that is the location from where the attention operates, and attention is a single sensor of all the senses in the body. The same attention sees through the eyes, listens through the ears, smells, tastes and touches. So now this single sensor, if it is developed in the sports, especially for the sports people, they can do wonders, Then of course they'll be able to do that. So I need your comments on that. Thank you very much for listening, giving me a chance.
You were talking about Sachin Tendulkar, who I recall very well, a genius of cricket. And he is someone who had this attention that you call it, these, the connection between the eyes and the arms and the billion cells in an exquisite harmony, you might say. And this is exactly what Messi has. Messi has been the greatest player in the world. He has exactly what you described, Dr. Chan. He has this hyper attention. He has an awareness of the space around him, of the movement around him, of the possibilities that are offered to him, which are all, it's a perfect kind of orchestration of everywhere from his right toe to his eyes to all the cells inside his brain. And he has this, like I say, this extraordinarily refined symphony going on in his body. And that's what he has to a greater degree than others. Everything works in greater harmony. I remember, you will know, the most famous of all the Spanish football coaches is Pep Guardiola, who's now at Manchester City. And Pep Guardiola used to be the coach of Messi at Barcelona. And Pep Guardiola worships Leo Messi. And he's in the habit, every Monday morning, he watches a video of Messi playing in a game over the weekend. And he says that what he does is when Messi receives the ball, he presses the pause button in the video. And then he, the great coach, has time, he's comfortable, he's not being hounded by, other large players wanting to sort of, attack him. And Pep Guardiola, he sits back and he says, what is the best option for Messi to do now? Messi to do a short pass, a long pass, to try and dribble, what should he do? And then Pep Guardiola says, yeah, this is what he should do. And he presses the play button and Messi always does it. So at extraordinary speed, he's able to process enormous amounts of information at enormous speed. And that's his genius. His genius is not expressed through the spoken word. I've interviewed him twice. It wasn't particularly interesting, but his genius, everything comes together, all these cells, the optic nerves, the feet, when he's on a football pitch with the ball at his feet, surrounded by other players. So I like your point very much. Attention is a big deal.
So what we say about attention is that wherever the attention goes, the divine energy flows, which is running the whole system 24/7. The human body is operating 24/7, breathing, the digestive system is on, blood flow is on, and that energy which runs the whole cosmos rather. So your creative intelligence, your soul practically, is connected to its source in real time. So exploiting this particular area, that the attention has got those divine attributes, has to be conveyed to the younger generation. And mind is nothing but information of time regarding experiences and events of your life, plus laws of nature. Every action has got an equal and opposite reaction. So the universal mind operates your mind, and that's what is your body. So I'm really sorry, I just pumped in and I was very keen to talk.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, but I think that's a good point. No, I remember what you say, John, about Messi. I won't want to compare them, and I'm also more a Barca and a Real fan. But I had this kind of sensation when I used to go to Bernabeu on the Zinedine Zidane years. No, it's like these great players, they have a sense of always taking the right decision, and in situations that that look really difficult, do easy things. No, it's like to give an easy pass that looks an easy pass, but it's incredibly difficult to do it under that pressure. No, so I think that's kind of characteristic of that the great players they have, and it's probably what makes them different to the others. No, the training.
Well, the great players in all sports involved in balls. Precisely because their whole system is so perfectly harmonized, they have just a fraction of a second more time to do what they do than ordinary players, and it's that tiny fraction of a second of time that they seem to have over the others that makes the difference.
Well, I want to talk another kind of big players, that are now becoming quite talk about in football. Is those who are bringing the money. I mentioned earlier this Netflix series, the English Game, that basically tells when football starts changing in England, in the mid 19th century, and basically what
late 19th century, not mid.
Yeah, it becomes professional in 1885. And basically the driving force for that was the Black Country or industrialists pumping money into their football teams, and making it professional, and realizing probably not that it was a business, but it was a way of building community. I don't exactly know. So now who is pumping the money is I don't know, moguls from the foreign lands, capital funds, and from the Arab countries, oil producing countries. I mean, peculiar Russian organizations. So this is the people who is pumping the money now in the game, much to the complaint of fans of those clubs who are not getting the money. So what's the difference between those English moguls of the late 19th century and this new money is coming? Is really a difference? Is a different stage? How do you see this?
Well, you just said that the fans of those clubs that are not receiving the big money are unhappy about it, but the fans of the clubs who are receiving the money are very happy about it. I mean, what's interesting is that people's devotion to their football club they support is so great that most people don't give a damn where that money comes from. We just had this whole case now with Roman Abramovich, who's being kicked out of Chelsea and having his possessions confiscated, including Chelsea and his homes in the UK because of his allegiance to Vladimir Putin. The thing about Abramovich, everybody knew when he took over Chelsea 19 years ago that he wasn't exactly morally spotless. I mean, these guys who made huge fortunes, obscene fortunes at the time of the fall of the Soviet Union, when we're using, and it's been acknowledged in courts of law, they use pretty corrupt methods to get what they got. And, and there's Abramovich who owns about 7 yachts. I mean, when I say yachts, the smallest one is 50 meters long. The biggest one's 162. There's a kind of an obscene wealth, and for him, owning Chelsea Football Club is like owning one more yacht or another Rolls Royce or something. It's like a toy for him. But the fans don't care. I mean, so long as their team is doing well, they can be owned by serial killers. They don't seem to care very much. No, I mean, you smile, but I mean, I'm actually that's literally true. I don't know, what can you do? I mean, the thing is, so long as we operate within a capitalist system, which, England definitely did at the end of the 19th century, it's very difficult to put a block on who and who owns the clubs. You can have political considerations, and now there's a possibility that the British government's going to do something about Manchester City because their owners is basically a state, United Arab Emirates, which have a certain sympathy with Vladimir Putin, and so the whole thing becomes immensely political and immensely complicated and very, very difficult to resolve. But I mean, in Spain is different. I mean, there's the old slogan, Spain is different. They used to say it in the tourist, posters. And the two biggest clubs, Barcelona and Real Madrid, belong to a kind of an old romantic, kind of almost amateur tradition, in that both clubs are owned by the fans, and they select the president. And there's a certain purity about that. How long they'll be able to maintain it, I don't know, because of course it's very difficult to carry on competing at the top European level against clubs like Manchester City, until now, like Chelsea, that have bottomless funds, that have unbelievably rich owners for whom spending, $200 million on a player is like you and me buying a hamburger. It's difficult to compete with that. So it's an issue, and I don't know how it's going to be resolved. But so long as we, like I say, so long as we continue with a capitalist system, and so long as we think this is the least bad system human beings have come up with, then it's going to be difficult to put brakes on that.
You wrote in one of your old articles that maybe for Madrid or Barcelona, it will help if they adapt their bylaws of being less democratic. Basically, that's what Mr. Perez has done. It made almost impossible to anybody to run for president unless you are a millionaire and a long-time member. And maybe this is explanation of, we can criticize, of course, many things of Mr. Perez, but in others, it's a club, as Mr. Tebas just said, well managed in economic terms. No, so it's maybe that the way where Barcelona, it's still fully democratic, and no need to say in what situation they are.
Well, we're getting into sort of complicated terrain, of course, Antonio. I mean, you know, managing a company, you know, a big company, a bus company, a car that company that manufactures elevators or cars, to do that democratically, so that all 50,000 employees have an equal say in what is done, I think is, you know, it's a lovely idea, but I think it's a road to chaos. And I think that, you know, the fact is that for companies to operate successfully, they need to have sort of a strong and powerful leadership. And that's what Real Madrid has with Florentino Perez.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a good point. No, and it works. It works for them. Well, I don't know if anybody has one question. If not, I just have a couple of them more. And
can I tell you about? You know, you mentioned that or I think Oscar mentioned that I did this book, Playing the Enemy, which became the film Invictus. Well, there's a very similar story involving football, in South Africa too, and I think it's worth telling it, because we're talking about sport and society and the impact that football has on society, and we started off talking about football as a kind of benign form of the tribalism that we all carry inside us. So in 1996, the African Nations Cup tournament was celebrated in South Africa. You had all the finalists. There's about 50 nations in Africa, and the last, 16 or so qualified for the finals, like they do for the European Nations Tournament or the World Cup. South Africa didn't have much of a tradition of football, of international football, because they'd been boycotted because of apartheid. They had not been playing any international games for about, more than 20 years. So no one gave them much hope. And the big teams in Africa were teams like Cameroon, Ghana, Senegal, as they still are now. Anyway, it was a time in South Africa when things were still tense. There was still a possibility in the air that there could be a civil war, that the white right-wing, racist white right-wing might rise up against Mandela's very young infant government. And there was still a need for powerfully symbolic events to unite people and give them a sense of common nationhood. And so this was another opportunity. Few thought it was going to have much impact because of the perceived weakness of the South African team, but they made it to the semi-final, incredibly, against Ghana, which had definitely the best team in Africa at the time. And Mandela understood very well the power of sport as an instrument of persuasion, getting into people's hearts, developing a sense of pride in your nation and a sense of community, of joint mission. Anyway, he went into the dressing room of his team, of the South African team, before the game. He shook hands with all the players. And before leaving and taking a seat in the stadium, he turned to them all and said, "Boys, I leave the country in your hands." Now, he understood that for the next 90 minutes, he, Nelson Mandela, ceased to have any relevance in the nation. The nation was those 11 young men kicking a football. That was, all the energy and pride and hope of an entire nation was fixed on them. And inspired by Mandela, they won 3-0, incredible. And they made it to the final against Tunisia. And they won against Tunisia again. And what was wonderful too was, of the 11 players, there were 8 were black and 3 were white. And the captain was a white guy. And so everybody could see themselves reflected in this team. It was offered a fair mirror of the racial mix in South Africa. And it was immensely, it was a very moving victory, but it definitely stirred the hearts and made people, yet again, proud to be South African, to share, a country that was so racially divided that never, black and white people never had the same objectives at all. And now they all wanted, their team to win. And so they did it in rugby in 1995, and they did it with football in 1996. And it was an immensely healthy thing for a society. And football has Mandela had a phrase that he used with me when I interviewed him for my book. He said, if you really want to persuade people, don't appeal so much to their brains, appeal to their hearts. And through sport, through football, which is the biggest sport, you can reach people's hearts, and it can be a force for good in the world.
Well, I think with this, I have no more. We should stop here. Just my last question. I hope that we have you in India. You said before we got in with the people that you've never been in India. So I hope we can have you visiting us.
I would love to.
This wonderful country. It's a fantastic country to be. So my last question is, what we can do for bringing these guys to the tribe? No, I mean they can stay in the cricket tribe, but we want them with us. No, and the sub tribe of the Spanish football better than the English one.
Well, I mean, right now, for the last 15 years or so, Spanish football, the Spanish league, has been the dominant league in the world. I mean, they sometimes, the Premier League of England has sort of also been quite strong in the last few years, but Spanish football is, it's as good as you're going to get. The Liga has got an immense quality and maybe a bit more finesse than the Premier League. But anyway, whatever. The thing is to convert people to the football tribe, and I'm sure it will happen. I mean, it's inevitable. I said at the beginning that football, it's an unstoppable force. It reaches every last corner of the planet, and you can be absolutely sure, José Antonio, that in 20 years from now, just as 20 years ago, football was a minority sport here, you can be sure that in 20 years' time, it'll be huge in India.
Yeah, for you to know, football is the second most watched sport on TV in India. Not far away from cricket, but that's we are there.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Oscar. If you want to say something.
No, I really agree. And as we were commenting right at the beginning, what has happened with football in the last 20 years here in India, it's incredible. For some of us, and I think our Indian friends will agree, that knew this country in the 80s, in the 70s, where football was almost inexistent, to what's happening now. It's an unstoppable force, as John said. It's really, and that's going to grow both with the Liga and the Premier and all, no? And I like very much the remark of John regarding luck. I think that's, you hit the nail there, because, and my brother used to say this, he's a big fan of Barcelona, and he says that one of the big attraction of soccer, it's a result of luck, which is unpredictability. That you never know who's going to win, and that a small team can prevail over a very huge team. I think that doesn't happen in tennis and in other more technical sports. No, and that
happens. I mean, it also happens so often that one team is clearly better, has more opportunities to score, is more deserving, but they still lose. It happens again and again and again, and that is the element of luck in life.
I just want to say one thing, Oscar, ahead of La Liga or ahead of English Premier League, what we need to help is to grow Indian football. The local league, national team, that is really important. The day before on Sunday, I went to Goa to see the final of the ISL, the Indian Super League. And it was the first match they play with fans on the stands in 2 years. There were 10,000 people coming from Kerala, play Kerala Blasters against Hyderabad. 10,000 people coming from Kerala to Goa by bus, but those roads maybe 10, 12 hours. And they were there at the stadium watching football. So Those are our tribe brothers and sisters who were traveling all those hours. So, and this is really important. No, we want the local football, Indian football, to be big. It's only with that international football, Spanish football, can be big as well in this country.
So good. I would like perhaps to close this program. I don't know if Marti or Kriti wants to say something. I see her here, or Marti, you want to close it?
Well, yes, yeah, we're going to wrap up this session today. No, I just wanted to say thank you so much, John, for your participation this evening in this series, and for your thoughts, remarks on football, and for having said that Messi is a very much better player than Cristiano Ronaldo. Well, and of course, I would like to thank also José Antonio Cachaza, the manager director of La Liga in India. And well, John, we look forward to seeing you soon in India. And well, and to our audience, I would say that after tomorrow we are having our second session of this series with the journalist Ayaz Memon, who is a specialist in cricket, and well, he's a prominent Indian journalist, and he will have a conversation with José Antonio. It's on Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Yeah, José Antonio, I don't know if you want to add something.
I'd just like to
Akriti?
say something.
Yes.
Mr. Carlin, just want to introduce myself. I'm Akriti. I work with José Antonio in the La Liga India office. It was an absolute pleasure listening to every word. I mean, we know the power of your written words, didn't know that the physical charisma would compete as strongly as the words that you write. Absolute pleasure listening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Akriti. By the way, I should just tell you that I worked on a Amazon documentary series called This Is Football, which you'll find on Amazon Prime. Mm-hmm. And it was a 6-part series, and it was about football all over the planet. And we had one of the documentaries was about some young girls in India who are crazy, mad football players and incredibly ambitious and love the game. And it means so much to them in order to sort of emancipate themselves and give them a sense of independence and pride and everything. And so, I mean, we didn't talk enough about this, Akriti, but I think that the, you know, if you can find it on Amazon Prime, the series is called This Is Football. And one of them is, you know, centers very much on this fabulous young Indian girl, about 14, 15 years old, who travels vast distances. José Antonio was talking about this too, to go and play football. And you could just see it meant so much to her and to the girls in her team. And you can really see that football can be a significant force for women in India too. I'm sure of it. No, it is. I mean, and two notes on this, John. Today, India national team, women's national team, is closer to play the World Cup than the men's national team. And second, from La Liga, we are cooperating with the Vicente Ferrer Foundation out of Anantapur in Andhra Pradesh, and they organize there a rural league in I don't know how many mandals with 3,000 boys and girls playing football. And they were telling us that just the fact of having girls in rural India playing football, it makes a difference for their lives. No, and I was there in December, and they are doing train the trainers, training coaches, and some of them, there are also girls going there. Some of them even have resistance from their families to be trained for being coaches, and they are helping them to break with this. It's magnificent. Yeah. Okay, listen, I have to run. Yeah, we all do. Excuse me, we'll have to run. We'll have to go. Okay. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to meet you all, and I would love to meet you all in person one day in India. Thank you very much, John.